inclination is to send a letter out and saying what tariff they're going to be paying. I think by the 9th they'll be fully covered, and they'll range in value from maybe 60 or 70% tariffs to 10 and 20% tariff.
What if the world as you know it is about to change? Not with an explosion, not with a conflict, but with a letter. A letter sent from Washington capable of determining the price of your morning coffee tomorrow, capable of threatening millions of jobs, rising unemployment, persistent inflation, and even a shift in the balance of global power. What is in this letter, and why does it matter? On July 4th, while America was celebrating its Independence Day, an announcement from the White House sent shockwaves across the world. President Donald Trump, in his signature style, announced that his administration would begin sending out letters. And these are not just any letters. They are tariff notices. And these are not the usual tariffs we've seen before. Forget about the trade wars from a few months ago. We are now talking about numbers that could shake global markets. President Donald Trump mentioned that import tariffs could skyrocket, not by 10, not 20, but up to 60, even 70%. 70%. Just imagine that. This could rattle the world economy and impact global markets deeply.
Maybe 60 or 70% tariffs to 10 and 20% tariffs.
For weeks, the world held its breath. Endless negotiations took place, with July 9th looming like a storm cloud. Leaders from the European Union, Japan, and dozens of other nations scrambled to reach a deal.
Negotiations with the European Union have been especially complex. France's foreign minister calling for a deadline extension, telling a French newspaper, "I would rather have a good deal than a bad deal on July 9th.
But President Trump's message that Thursday was clear and brutal. Time was running out. My tendency is to just send the letter and say what tariffs they'll be paying, Trump said. That's much easier.
Tariffs are more than just a negotiating tool. He argues they help domestic producers and generate revenue. Many economists argue they also raise prices and can hurt the economy.
Easier? For whom? For the importing companies that would have to pay these taxes? Certainly not. And in the end, it won't be for you, the consumer, who will most likely bear the brunt of rising prices. Stock markets across Asia immediately went into turmoil. Investors in London and New York stared anxiously at their screens. The SET index in Thailand swung wildly, a small reflection of global panic. This became the top economic headline in every newspaper from Bangkok to Brussels. But is this truly just about economics? Is it only about balancing trade deficits? Or simply protecting American industries? Or is there something much bigger at play? Perhaps a far greater game is being played here. A three-dimensional chess match, where tariffs are merely sacrificial pawns to provoke a reaction. A strategic game that will reshape alliances, create new rivals, and redefine who holds power.
We talked to many of the countries, and we're just going to tell them what they have to pay to do business in the United States. I'd like to just send letters out to everybody. Congratulations, you're paying 25%.
This isn't just about the economy. This is a story about how a tariff threat can become a catalyst for the biggest geopolitical shift of a generation. To truly understand what's happening, we must look beyond the tariff numbers themselves, because tariffs are not just numbers. We must see them as a language of power. For over 70 years, the world has operated under a system built after World War II. Institutions like the World Trade Organization, WTO, were created to prevent conflict through trade, ensuring global commerce adhered to mutually agreed rules. Trump's approach of sending the letter is not just a practical method. It is a direct rejection of the system that has underpinned global trade for decades. It is a clear signal that the United States, under his leadership, will act unilaterally. No longer interested in the slow, complex, multilateral diplomacy. What he offers is fast, hard, one-sided transactions, with the U.S. as the game's controller.
U.S. businesses could soon learn the tariff rate they'll have to pay for certain imports. President Donald Trump says he's sending determination letters to countries, possibly starting today.
And there is no clearer example of this new direction than the most striking threat buried in this week's news. A Senate bill, fully backed by President Trump, would impose tariffs as high as 500% on China and India if they continue importing oil from Russia. Let's be clear, this has nothing to do with fair trade. This is the clearest form of using economic policy as a weapon. It is geopolitical pressure packaged in the language of tariffs, with one primary goal: to financially strike Vladimir Putin and force him back to the negotiating table with Ukraine.
Sanctions
Yes.
on Russia. Have you gotten Trump on board
Big
with
breakthrough here. So what does this bill do? If you're buying products from Russia and you're not helping Ukraine, then there's a 500% tariff on your products coming to the United States.
The U.S. is using its enormous market power to force two Asian giants, China and India, to choose between neutrality or taking sides in a conflict rooted in the heart of Europe. Yet this is not without risk. This is a high-stakes maneuver. Such pressure could trigger a global energy crisis or push Beijing and New Delhi closer to Moscow. This power play does not stop on the international stage. It spills into domestic affairs as well. The public feud between Trump and Elon Musk, one of the world's richest individuals, is no longer just a social media spat. Trump's threat to cut billions in government subsidies to Musk's companies is a clear signal. Even domestic industrial giants are not immune if they are seen as misaligned with the president's agenda. This is a fusion of political and economic power on an unprecedented scale.
U.S. President Donald Trump and billionaire Elon Musk are at it again. This time, they are clashing over money, power, and a bill that could define Donald Trump's legacy.
Yet, amidst all these threats, a winner has emerged. Look at Vietnam. Amidst the chaos, the U.S. and Vietnam quietly agreed on a trade deal. Vietnam would face manageable tariffs, 20 to 40%, relatively tolerable rates. In return, Vietnam granted full market access with zero tariffs for U.S. goods.
Pay a 20% tariff on any and all goods sent to the U.S. and a 40% tariff on transshipping. That's important because there's been a lot.
For economists, this is more than just a trade deal. It is a blueprint. For governments across Asia, it sends a message: work with us and you'll get access. Oppose us and you'll face our wrath. This is friendshoring, but not the soft version. This is friendshoring on steroids. A systematic effort to shift global supply chains away from China and form new alliances with countries deemed strategically reliable by Washington. This puts traditional U.S. allies in a very difficult position. Japan and the EU, for example, face threats of 35 and 50% tariffs. They are security allies, but in this new economic game, they are treated as competitors. This creates cracks in Western alliances. Will Germany, France, and Japan submit to U.S. pressure? Or will they form their own trading blocs to counter American economic hegemony?
The president recently said he doesn't think extensions past July 9th are necessary. He'll meet with his trade team this week, and in the coming days, we expect to learn which other countries, like Japan, will also get letters instead of trade deals.
Of course, the main player on this chessboard is China. The initial trade war between these two giants looked like a slugfest. U.S. tariffs at 145% were met with China's 125% in return. But now, the game is more subtle, resembling a complex chess match.
And as you all know, the president just put out a statement announcing an additional tariff on China. The tariff on China will now go up to 125% because China imprudently decided to retaliate against the United States. And as I said at the podium yesterday,
on one hand, Trump threatens crippling tariffs. On the other, reports suggest the U.S. has lifted some export restrictions on chip design software to China. This seems contradictory, doesn't it? But in the new geopolitical logic, it makes perfect sense. It is a pressure and release strategy. Hit them hard in sectors like manufacturing and finished goods, but offer slight relief in areas like technology. The goal is to keep China engaged in negotiations and prevent conflicts from escalating into total breakdown.
Down the road, but we're going to be trading in China. China's going to be paying a lot of tariffs, but we have a big deficit. They understand.
China is not standing still. They are learning and adapting rapidly. They are accelerating efforts for technological self-sufficiency, strengthening domestic markets, and expanding influence through initiatives like the Belt and Road. Each tariff move by the U.S. will likely be met with tariffs, but also subtler strategies, consumer boycotts, or slow-walking approvals for American companies. This is not just tit-for-tat trade retaliation. This is a long-term struggle, a battle for technological and economic supremacy.
Reportedly told Chinese airlines to stop buying parts from American companies, and it says it will no longer accept deliveries of Boeing jets.
So, what does all of this mean for you, watching in America or the UK? Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has given a sobering hint. He said interest rates would likely be lower now, if not for these tariff threats. Why? Because tariffs are taxes, and taxes on imported goods can significantly increase inflation.
So I think that's right. In effect, we went on hold when we saw the size of the tariffs and essentially all inflation forecasts for the United States went up materially as a consequence of the tariffs.
This means your cost of living may rise. A new car, an iPhone, or even your daily groceries could become more expensive. The company you work for may delay expansion due to global uncertainty. Your pension funds may fluctuate as stock markets react to every rumor and tweet coming out of Washington. This is the paradox of this policy. While designed to make America great again, its impact can painfully affect the wallets of ordinary citizens. Not just in the US, but also in allied countries like the UK, whose economies are deeply tied to global trade. So, as we look back on the news from the first week of July 2025, it is clear that we are not just witnessing a series of trade policy announcements. We are witnessing a pivotal moment in history.
United States. He went on to say, therefore, I am recommending a straight 50% tariff on the European Union starting on June 1st of 2025.
We are seeing a shift from a rules-based multilateral world to a transactional world driven by power. We see the economy not merely as a prosperity engine, but as a key weapon in the geopolitical arsenal. Old alliances are being tested, and new alliances are being forged in the heat of economic competition. The remaining question is not, which country will pay higher tariffs, but what kind of world is being built from all this? Is this temporary chaos before a new, stable global order emerges? Or is this the beginning of a prolonged era of economic conflict, a world more fragmented, more unstable, and ultimately poorer for everyone? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, the letters sent from Washington this week will echo for years to come. What do you think? Is this a necessary strategy to rebalance global trade, or a reckless gamble that could destabilize the entire world? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you found this analysis valuable, please consider liking this video, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell so you won't miss our next deep dive discussions. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.